Story is called Silver Threads. Original story. Back in the 1950s, in the small town of Tishomingo, Oklahoma, the Indian women preferred to deliver their babies at home, sometimes with the help of a midwife. There was a clinic in town, but they didn't like to go there. Too many of them had walked in with full, round bellies and walked out with empty arms. They would be told, "Your baby died during the night," even as the healthy infant was handed out the back door of the clinic into strangers' arms. As it happened, a woman named Mary was having a difficult time giving birth, and she went to see Dr. Bell at the clinic for help. Once there, her labor was long and difficult, but finally, a tiny little baby girl was born. This little one's eyes looked in two different directions at the same time, and her legs were twisted so far inward that her toes pointed backwards. But when Mary looked at her baby's face, she smiled because the mother-daughter resemblance was so strong. And then she whispered into her newborn's ear the name she selected for her. She said the name 4 times so the little one would know who she was. And then she closed her eyes to rest. And when she opened them, her baby was gone. Her baby was taken in a caravan of little ones, infants, toddlers, preschoolers, taken northward to a large Midwestern city. And once in that city, all the little ones were taken to a religious institution and placed in a big room the size of a small auditorium, and they filled that room. It was crowded. Then the congregation was called, and they were told, "Come tonight at 6 o'clock and bring a friend." And they did. And when they got there, they were told, "Take 1, take 2 if you can." And one by one, and sometimes by 2, all the little ones went to new homes. The man who picked Mary's baby wanted to be the father of a dozen, but he didn't have any yet. He brought the baby home to his wife, who was due to have her own first child in a month's time. And when she saw the baby girl, she said, "Get that dirty thing out of my house." He said, "This isn't a dirty thing, this is a baby." She said, "Get rid of it, throw it away." He said, "You don't throw away a baby." She said, "Then take it back." And he said, I can't take it back." And she was in no position to argue, so the baby stayed. Now the man was trying to get a business going, and he was gone a lot, working late and trying to make the business happen. So he wasn't around much. The wife decided that she would leave the baby girl in a crib and not feed her, not care for her, and soon the baby would starve and die, and she'd be rid of it. Her plan would have worked, but the man would come home late at night after the street lights came on and the house lights went off, and he would come in and look at the little ones, and he would find her awake, and he would say, "Oh, you must be hungry." And then he would feed her and burp her and change her diaper and talk to her, and in this way the baby didn't die. It took the wife 3 years to come up with a new plan to get rid of Sug. That's what they called her, Sug, S-U-G. And by now, Sug's legs had started to come forward, and her favorite thing in the world to do was to run fast. So the wife took Sug outside on a sidewalk by a street, and she said, "You like to run. Go run in the street." And Sug, happy to be turned loose, ran as fast as her little legs would carry her out into the middle of the street, where she stopped, turned, and ran back to the woman, who said, "Not now, stupid. Wait until a car is coming." And pretty soon a car was coming, and she said, "Run, run now." And Sug, with a big smile, ran out into the street and got hit by a car. The driver stopped. He came around the front of the car to see Sug's lifeless body, and he asked the woman, "Is she?" And he didn't want to say the word. And the wife said, "Oh, just go. Why did you stop? Just leave." And he said, "There's been an accident. The police need to be called." And she said, No, just go." And at the point where he was saying, "Well, at least let me give you my contact information," Sug was regaining consciousness. She opened her eyes, and she saw a big silver metal bumper from the front of the car and the right front wheel. And then she tried to get up, but her legs and arms were not listening. And finally she got her shoulders to do a little bit of rocking, and that's when the wife noticed that Sug was moving. She went over and she stood over the girl, and she looked down at her, and she said, "Thought we lost you." And then went back to talking to the man. Nothing kills her. And Sug got up slowly, and then the wife and Sug walked back to the sidewalk, and they watched the car drive away. Well, Sug may not have been wanted, but she was useful sometimes, because the wife was afraid to go places alone. She was afraid that if she went somewhere alone, that she would be injured or assaulted or harmed some way. And she thought that if she had someone with her, even a little child, that would make her safe. So she'd say to her son, "Come with me downtown." And her son would say, "I don't want to go." And then she'd say, "Okay, Sug, we're going downtown." And Sug would say, "I don't want to go either." And the wife would say, "Too bad, you're going." It was on one of these excursions that a stranger noticed Sug's eyes, and she said, "Oh, that child has the most beautiful eyes, and those must be the longest eyelashes I've ever seen." And the wife, she batted her eyelashes, and she said, "Well, what about my eyes?" And the woman looked and said, "Your eyes are average, but hers are gorgeous. Look at those eyelashes." And this made the wife mad. So that night when Sug was in bed, she felt a pain at her eye. But she knew she was supposed to be sleeping, so she kept her eyes closed and tried to sleep. And then she felt another big pain by her eye. This time she opened her eyes, and when she did, she saw the wife standing in the darkness, perfectly still, with her hands behind her back. And Sug wondered, does she think I can't see her? But nobody talked. And after a minute, Sug went back to sleep. And as soon as she was asleep, she felt another big pain by her eyes. This time she opened them right away, and she saw the wife standing in the darkness, perfectly still, silent, with her hands behind her back. This time Sug talked. She said, "What are you hiding?" And then the wife took out her hand and she held up a big tweezers. And then she laughed. She laughed out of the room, down throughout the house, laughing. Well, Sug was not helpless. Sug, at some point, started hearing a voice in her head, and the voice would warn her of many things. The voice tried to keep her safe. For example, the voice might say, "Walk home a different way because there's trouble on your normal route." Or the voice might say, "Stay away from those boys, they want to hurt you." And as Sug got older and she started driving, and she liked to drive the way she liked to run, fast, the voice might say, "Slow down. There's a police car hiding half a mile up on the right." And sure enough, it would be there. The voice always seemed to be right. Well, 2 weeks before Sug's high school graduation, the wife told Sug, "You can't live here anymore." And Sug asked if she could have a week to find a new place, and the wife said yes. But it didn't take a week. Sug found another girl who needed a roommate, and a few days later they signed a lease on an apartment, and Sug's adult life began. In time, she got married, and she had children of her own, and each one of her children looked very, very much like their mother. And Sug's children grew up, and Sug grew old. And when she was very old, lying in a hospital bed, when she was no longer in the world of the living, but not yet in the world of the dead, she saw 5 silver threads coming from her. And she could see where 4 of them went. They went one each to her 4 children who were in the room with tear-filled eyes. But the 5th silver thread went far off into the distance, and Sug didn't know who or what was on the end of that thread. So she got up and started walking, following the thread. And pretty soon, she was more floating than walking. She continued on, and then she heard a voice calling a name. The name sounded familiar, but Sug couldn't remember ever having heard that name. And she continued until the thread led to a woman standing by the side of the river. And Sug walked up to the woman, and when they looked into each other's face, it was like looking in a mirror for both of them. They looked so much alike. And then they hooked arms and held hands, and they waded across the river together. Once on the other side, Sug could see that the thread that connected her to her mother, Mary, connected her to her grandmother and through to the great-great-grandmother and many generations of ancestors. And they surrounded Sug, and she felt safe, she felt warm, she felt protected. Then the grandmother spoke. She said, "We've been watching you a long time." And Sug knew the voice of her grandmother. It was that voice she heard that always kept her safe, that warned her of danger. And Sug smiled, and then her relatives smiled, and Sug, for the first time in her life, knew the meaning of home. Home is where your mother is. Thank you.